Okay, let's get started. I'm sure we have a few more people joining us as we're proceeding. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. My name is Chris Michaelsen. I'm a professor in the School of Law here at Western Sydney University and the Associate Dean Research. And it's my great privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar this evening, this morning, and co-hosted by Kyle Swain, who's joining us online as well. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that that Western Sydney is based on unceded lands of many different Indigenous Australian First Nations people. The traditional owners of the land from which I'm joining from are the Barramatical people of the Darug Nation, and they have occupied these lands for tens of thousands of years before being submitted to forced displacement and exploitation by white colonial settlers. And I would like to acknowledge them and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. And we're gathering here as policymakers, as researchers, as human rights defenders. And so I would also like to acknowledge the important role and the deep knowledge that has been passed on by First Nations people for tens of thousands of years. So we have a stellar lineup of speakers this evening, this morning, and we will be recording this webinar as well. There will be space to post questions in the Q&A box on Zoom as well. In terms of proceedings, I will hand over in a second to the Dean of the Law School, Professor Catherine Renshaw, who will say a few words, and then Kyle will be taking over and introduce the ambassador, and then we're passing on to our speakers this evening. So without any further ado, I hand over to Professor Renshaw, please.
Thanks very much, Chris, and I add my welcome to everyone here. It's a really great honour to open this webinar on behalf of Western Sydney University School of Law, especially to acknowledge the participation of His Excellency the Ambassador in the webinar. The School of Law at Western Sydney University is the most diverse law school in the country. We have students from Sudan, Syria, Myanmar, Vietnam, Iraq, and Ukraine, places that are riven by conflict. And our students bring to their law school a couple of things. One of them is a deep sense of justice, and another is a commitment to freedom of speech, particularly the freedom to speak about things that are happening in the countries that they and their families have come from. And Kyle, who is one of our law students from the very beginning of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, has been determined that what is one of the most significant and terrible events in our lifetime will be present in the minds of all of the students and the academics and the people responsible for teaching at Western Sydney University. And we've been very happy to support all of his initiatives in this space. We believe our students are partners in learning and that they should have a voice equally as strong as anyone else's. So I'll hand over to Kyle, but I just would like to thank you very sincerely, the speakers today, for making yourselves available for this really important webinar. We'll make sure that after the event, the recording is promoted as widely as possible as well. Thank you. Kyle.
Thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for attending. And thank you our speakers for taking the time. I know it's early in Ukraine, and so I hope you've had your coffee, and I hope the rest of your day after the seminar is good. I know I'll try to make my night good. So won't say much more. I'll hand it off to the ambassador. I believe one of the most hardworking people I know. 24/7, he's working. So, and just the ambassador Vasyl, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl, and Special thanks to Dean Renshaw and of the Professor Michaelsen for doing this webinar. It's very important topics that will be raised here today. And I'm happy to join you from a Jubilee Room of the NSW State Parliament. We're going to be having a reception here in 30 minutes or so, but definitely it's great that you're recording it, and I hope many students and faculty, all those who are studying international humanitarian law or who are practitioners, will listen to it, will hear people from Ukraine, and we have some prominent leaders of the Ukrainian NGOs who particularly focus on several important topics. One of them is the treatment of the prisoners of war, and another one is related to the genocide in Ukraine. I mean, it's a word that we cannot fully use, of course, because it has to be prosecuted legally in a proper way. But definitely what we see happening with the Ukrainian children and the way they've been abducted, moved, and the way they've been treated, we definitely see a huge and gross violation of human rights and also of international humanitarian law. So just generally on a topic, I think Russia's war in Ukraine is different from all other wars currently happening in Ukraine. And there are several reasons for that. Firstly, the first reason is that we are dealing with a permanent member of the UN Security Council. So the permanent member of the UN Security Council, which has nuclear weapons, has decided to change history and change borders. And we've never seen it in the world's history at this scale and at this magnitude. That's the largest war which is currently happening in the world, with 650,000 Russian troops deployed, with all the different weapon systems and platforms being used against the Ukrainians. That never happened in Europe since the Second World War. In terms of that, on a daily basis, Russians are losing 1,000 people, either wounded, killed, or captured. And many Ukrainians die as well. And this war has been ongoing for 3.5 years. But from a standpoint of view, of course, Ukrainians are interested in ending this war. But what most importantly, Ukrainians want to see this war end and justice achieved. And this is where it all comes down. How can we achieve peace and make sure that Russia is held accountable for the crime of aggression, for numerous war crimes and crimes against humanity? And of course, other government agencies as well as lawyers are currently documenting all those crimes which Russians are committing. And it's important to do it properly in order that we can legally then prosecute those individual Russian commanders or Russia as a state for what they have done. Because the problem we are facing today is actually how to achieve that justice. And often in international affairs, it's one of those things which are very difficult to achieve for different reasons, especially when you deal with a country which has nuclear weapons. And of course, one of the ways of how it could be done is to make sure that Russia's sovereign assets, which are currently immobilized primarily in Europe, will be used for Ukraine. And most importantly, as you know, there are a number of different proceedings currently in the International Criminal Court as well as in the International Court of Justice to keep Russia accountable. We also have a special register of damages, which has been done by the Council of Europe, and we are documenting all the damage the Russians are doing. But I think for any student of international law, this is a fascinating time to live in, of course, because to see it in action. But most importantly, what we have seen, and this is, of course, I'm being a bit provocative for your discussion, that there is no international law. It just doesn't exist. Because if we see what's happening, and for Russians, there is no international law. There is no International Convention on the Customs of War. They seem to be totally disregarding it in the way they conduct war, in the way they use civilians, in the way they treat prisoners of war. It looks like international law does not exist for the Russians. The way they've been treating our civilians, the way they've been treating our children, what they do in the occupied territories, there is no international humanitarian law for the Russians. And this is something which you have to keep in mind, that at times of war, your enemy may not abide by the rules which you think they should abide if there is a conflict. And that's a dilemma we are facing, right? And especially for any practitioner of international humanitarian law. And that's a major challenge of how to eventually keep Russia accountable. Look, there are so many different issues which have to be looked at. I don't pretend to be an international lawyer. I'm just an ambassador, representing my country. But definitely, it's a very important area. If we believe that there is any chance for the UN to survive, for the UN Charter to be respected, we must make sure that Russia is forced into peace and that Russia is held accountable for what they've done. And on this note, I wish you a productive discussions, and I welcome Ukrainians who are joining you all from on Monday morning. It's not that early anymore. It's almost 9 o'clock. So it's already time to start a good week, a productive week. And Kyle, thank you very much for your relentless advocacy on campus and beyond. Your work is highly valued. The work that you've done on Ukrainian indigenous people as well, and everything you do. We hope you will be able, I hope you will be able to visit Ukraine soon. So without much further ado, I would like to conclude my remarks. And again, thanks a lot to faculty and the dean for supporting this initiative, for recording this webinar. I'm sure many students will go online, find it, and watch the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vasyl. And I hope you have a productive night. I hope one of the biggest issues we face in Australia at the moment is the continued purchase of Russian oil. And I hope that this year we can kind of end that. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. So I'd like to give it to our first speaker, Sasha. If Sasha's not, it's very busy week. If Sasha's not there, then I think I can give it to the next speaker. Sasha, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Sorry, it's like always, we have a blackout now, so it's a little bit complicated for computer. But hi, hello.
Hello.
I can speak now, or
Yeah.
we just represent.
Yeah.
Okay, so hello again. My name is Oleksandra Romantsova. I'm Executive Director, Center for Civil Liberties. It's a human rights defender organization which exactly documented war crimes committed at the territory of Ukraine. Started from 2014. Me, personally, I'm exactly coordinate mobile group starting from March 2014 in Crimea, so-called referendum. And after this, more than a lot. I mean, even not calculated during the Donbas period of where we have more than 40 field mission. Now, together with other organizations, we create a special initiative which called Tribunal for Putin, and we cover whole the territory of Ukraine, documented war crimes, and now in our database from 2022, from point of invasion, we have 90,000 episodes of international crimes. And here for today, Kyle asked me show quite interesting kind of, it's not even war crimes because it's not described real enough in the international humanitarian law, but I want to speak with one of the element hybrid war, because when we describe and when we look at the hybrid war, we always think about it's something international, national, it's something about information and something about military. But de facto, when we speak about hybrid war, it's a seven quite understandable pillars. And these pillars we need to look around because exactly at the territory of Ukraine, we see them all. Why so? Because territory of Ukraine quite unique for all other conflict, which now ongoing in the territory of the whole globe. Because Ukraine is high developed country with really close link with a lot of technology and a lot of process whole the world, and that's why we look at the whole the scope of information and human rights violation and hybrid attack and different points, and figure out that we have a 7-point of hybrid war which exactly working now at the territory of Ukraine fully, because For example, I want to be more concrete and more.
Sorry, Sasha, the connection's a bit rough. You might have to reconnect.
0.5 cyber attack.
Okay. Are you there, Sasha? The connection's a bit choppy.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just a little bit
Hello?
rough.
Oh,
Hello.
yeah, I will try without video, but with slides. Let's try it in this way. Maybe it will be a little bit easier. Again, sorry, but like we have a schedule when the light will be turned off, and we have non-schedule turn off of light. So sorry, it's happened right now. So yeah, so when we speak about cyber attack, why it's in whole the form of hybrid war, why in Ukraine it's so so visible and so feel. Last 2 days exactly, one of international experts will give the rating of cyber attacks whole the world. And first on the rating, that was Russia. Russia exactly started use the cyber attack like one of part of hybrid war, not from Ukraine, absolutely. First time we see it exactly like a part of war at Georgia in 2008 when object which was attacked by Russian military forces exactly at the same time was attacked in the cyber level. Now it will speak more about Ukraine, how it's looked like in other way. From 2013, 2014, we feel it a lot around the question of our administrative bodies and some process which connecting with different kinds of election, from local election to national election. 2009, that was a huge, huge challenge for us to care about system, and it's even not system of electronic vote or a cyber system of election, like, for example, working at Estonia, in which they same feel a really big attack from Russia hackers started from 2015, and most biggest was in 2019. So now when we speak about hybrid war and cyber attack here in Ukraine, we see first world cyber war, because Russia joined not only their quite big potential and resource, but include as we know, and Ukrainian cyber system of defense give the report each year of after full-scale invasion, 22, 23, 24, and 25, we see that they join a lot of specialists or hackers from different region, and a lot from China and other, like say, Asian country. And sure, as you know, that a lot of hackers you can exactly figure out, and they present some state or not. But when we speak about Russian forces of cyber attack, we exactly have effects, and not only we are, because Estonia, after attack from Russia side at their system, create special NATO cyber protection forces, and they collect the data there. So we know that exactly it's not just commercial hackers who was paid. That's why they attack some object, the territory of Ukraine, by the order of Russia. No, it's state structure of Russia Federation which exactly attack what exactly target they choose. First of all, they choose the targets a database of state level. I mean tax-paying database. I mean register of businesses. I mean data about, for example, one of the biggest attack that was our health care system, and that's absolutely matched with situation regularly kidnapped Ukrainian children. And one of the results, as we don't have like full we don't have a full facts about that, but one of the idea why they attack exactly health system that's trying to destroy recording about children's, about citizen of Ukraine under 18, and trying in this way exactly like kidnap them fully when you don't have any understanding how many people you need to trying to find and bring back from territory of Russia Federation. One of the biggest regular attack, which absolutely combined with military attack, it's trying to destroy its system of transport and system of electricity supply, like now we feel it. In this way, we see absolutely synchronized drone or missile attack, and in same way, in same cyber attack for this system. And few times we feel it a lot. I mean, Ukrainian society last 4 years feel it when we don't have, we have a system which called DIA. DIA, it's de facto electronic governance. It's a portal when you, if you identify yourself, you can get all information which state have about you. I mean, your documents, your passports, your address, your I don't know, drive license, all of this. So it's not a place where all of this like holding like a database, but that's a portal to have access to different database. So so DIA give unique numbers for a lot of, for example, open businesses, private entrepreneurship, or something like this. And we have 3 months absolutely stuck on this system. Why? Because Russia hackers exactly destroyed virtual machine which give the unique numbers. For example, if you want to open or close your business or something like this. So third biggest attack which we have, that was transport system. You know that our railway system, one of the best and biggest exactly system of evacuation or transport civilians, first of all, and that's only for now system, for example, going to the out of the port because flying not using, bus not so stable like train, and that was 2 months of absolutely destroyed system of buying tickets or take information about your previous tickets and all of this. That that first of all affected a lot of civilians, but except that we have situation where military personnel, military staff, they have a right to have free tickets, and so they give their surname, they give their data, and this I think was one of not only me, analytic in this sphere, think that was one of target of Russia's system that exactly take information about that. So it's logistic of part of military, because they comes home, for example, for vacation and comes back to their position, and this way it gives them understanding, like partly give them understanding of moving of military forces. And easy that's rating which I mentioned. Second country which is exactly in this rating, it's Ukraine. Why so? Because Ukraine feel their threats mostly every day, start to be one of the best human rights cyberspace defenders. I mean, because it's not only about care of state database. One of the typical thing was happen around of this first world cyber war. It's getting private information of people, not only from state database, but from different marketplace, different big networks where exactly people going and like put some their information, personal data. And from both sides now it's a huge level of hacking exactly such database and put them at the public access. What we have here, we have like, I don't know, address of important state position person. We have information about commercial and financial operation and all of that. So so when we speak about hybrid war in the sphere of cyberspace, we speak about absolutely unpredictable but really fast develop kind of attacks. And more and more, our system going to the centralized through exactly cyberspace. For example, system working with transport, system working with electricity supplying, system working with data, system working with demographic statistic, and all of this. And all of this can be under attack if we will not think about that, and we will not accept it like a part of war. So Ukraine and Russia now is a big example, and this war, they're not only look like future in the military field, I mean in the battlefield, when a lot of drones and other robot representatives technique can be used, but here in cyber attacks we see absolutely unique system of destroying. And it's not something like virus Petya, if you remember. That's why maybe you remember that in 2020 that was one of quite typical way how can be destroyed the system. It's a virus which go into the SAMO system and destroy it in the back way. You need to repeat fully your system and repeat fully your data. But a lot of cyberspace give to other point of hybrid war. For example, information attack, creating of virtual reality through using the so-called trolls. It's a people or artificial intelligence or de facto people who working by their own hands, who trying to showing it in any pages, in any place where you can give the comments in some way, to create some massive picture of some opinion supporting of some position or something like this. So we can say, yeah, but people smart, people will look that these comments right absolutely identify like absolutely similar everywhere. No, people get information from first line, and after this, most of people not check information, not check sources. So information attack here like deeply connected with cyber attack and cyberspace. And sure, we know a lot of situation when politic attack, like connecting with cyberspace, when we see creation it's not only using the propaganda, but when we see de facto virtual character of some politic. One of the typical example closest to us, we can look at the Romania, yeah, or other countries, when exactly people get information, get news, and they think that's a news, and we know that's a propaganda, because news need to base at fact, but propaganda always based at emotion. So politic attack, same, a lot of take forces and take manipulative opportunities exactly from working in cyberspace. So all of this brings us at this end of the understanding that experience Ukraine and this war and in this part of war exactly, that's from one side unique, from other side right now need to reaction, because cyberspace don't have any physical or geographical limits. You know that it's just a question: are you have covering by internet, and are you have smartphones? And that means that that's you don't know about that, but war can be inside your smartphone right now. And Ukraine, like a country which covered by internet for 33% of territory, even when we speak about occupied territory now, it's 23 to 22%, and each third representative of Ukraine population have some device with connected with internet. We need to understand that exactly cyberspace start to be absolutely new, but without any limitation, like place and area for war. But we don't have any describing of how cyber attacks, cyber crimes can be connected with international criminal law, how it can be like take some definition about like a crime, who part of war and human rights violation. I will stop here, open to any questions. I will try to turn on video, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure it help us. It's okay. I'm not stuck.
Thank you. The connection is a little bit rough. If we can, we'll leave
Sorry.
questions for the end. If that's everything, I'll move on to the next speaker. Lyubov.
Yes, hello. I will share my presentation as well. Try okay. So, my name is Lyubov Smachylo, and I am legal analyst and head of analytical department at the Media Initiative for Human Rights. And I will speak about violations of prisoners of war rights. Can you see my presentation?
Yep, it's there.
Okay, great. Okay, so yes, I will just tell about our organization in a few words. The Media Initiative for Human Rights is Ukrainian NGO, and we combine journalists and human rights protection to uncover Russian war crimes and other related to the Russian war in Ukraine. We have been operating since 2016, and immediately after the creation of our NGO, our main activity was investigations of human rights violations, followed by the advocacy and support of cases that we have been documented. Currently, we combine monitoring and documenting of human rights violations with the Russian Federation aggression in Ukraine. So the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine was followed by a wide range of violations of human rights in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. And we have been documenting persecution of civilians in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, and also violations of their rights while in the detention, and also violations of the prisoners of war rights in the Russian detention. We are doing in-depth interviews with victims, both civilian detainees who were released from Russian captivity and prisoners of war who were released during official exchange. So we have some statistics that we are doing about the civilian detainees. We are aware of 3,600 civilians that were arrested in the occupied territories of Ukraine and then were placed in the places of detention all over the Russian Federation, but also in the occupied territories of Ukraine. We are aware about, of course, prisoners of war, but we don't have a general number of Ukrainian prisoners of war who are still in Russian captivity. But we are investigating all cases of inhuman treatment, torture, and detention conditions in these places of detention. And so we started to map all these places of detention in the Russian Federation and occupied territories of Ukraine, and also to investigate where exactly these people are held. And here on the slide, you can see which kind of infrastructure Russians are using for prisoners of war detention and civilian detainees detention in the temporary places of detention, mostly in the occupied territories of Ukraine. So they are using their positions, different types of civil infrastructure like schools, railway stations, or government buildings, and people and prisoners of war also they are held usually in basements or in some kind of rooms in these buildings. And we also have a permanent detention facilities, and these permanent facilities, so they are under the Ministry of Justice system of the Russian Federation, so they are official places of detention. And in violation of the international humanitarian law, prisoners of war, they were never held in a special camps for prisoners of war. So Russians are using these colonies, police departments, and pretrial detention centers that normally they use for like prisoners, Russian prisoners, but now they are using them also to hold Ukrainian prisoners of war in there. Here you can see the map with a QR code. So if you scan the QR code, you will have a Google map where we mapped all places of detention we're aware of from the in-depth interviews with victims. And we have 3 types of places of detention in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, in the liberated territories of Ukraine, but which were under occupation, and so we know the places of detention where civilians and prisoners of war were held, and in the Russian Federation. We have interviewed 150 prisoners of war who were officially exchanged, and we have prepared an analysis based on 72 interviews. So we could have a picture of what is happening in the places of detention and which violations are committed by the Russian Federation against Ukrainian prisoners of war. In most of the places of detention, we have so-called admission procedure. It's when prisoners of war or Ukrainian civilian detainees, because usually they are held in the same places of detention. They are coming in these places of detention, and they pass through this admission procedure. And it occurs when they transferred also to new places of detention, because we know that prisoners of war and Ukrainian civilian detainees, they are also displaced from between these places of detention. So we have, for example, we have a case when one prisoner of war, he was held in more than 15 places of detention during 3 years of his imprisonment. And so the guards in the detention site usually form a corridor and punch, kick, and severely beat these detainees before they will register them as a detainees in this place of detention. And so you can also see some of statistics that 80% of the interviewed were subjected to violence. 51% of victims were subjected to the use of stun gun during interrogation and also during this admission procedure. And 21% witnessed the death of other prisoners. Here you can see the reconstruction of the cell in one of the places of detention. We prepared a VR reconstruction that we usually present during some kind of events or seminars or conferences, so people can experience how it is to be in these conditions, because This reconstruction was done with the help of the sketch that we received from one civilian detainee. He's still in Russian captivity, but he managed to send these sketches to his father with the help of his lawyer. And we collected all the sketches and we did this reconstruction of the cell. So usually we can like document that there are more people that normally used to be in these cells. They don't have a normal access to shower or privacy to the toilet. Also, they don't have like fresh air, and you can see the picture. Actually, it's something that a lot of detainees who were exchanged and with whom we have interviews, they are describing these conditions like this. And here you have some information about the deaths in the Russian captivity. So we had some of numbers about deaths of prisoners of war in Russian captivity, but we also have information about civilian detainees. We know that usually their death is because of the detention conditions, but also because of torture and physical violence. They are live in these places of detention, so you can see here about the forensic experts' conclusions about why these people died in Russian captivity, and we're like it's a continuing process because we're still receiving bodies from Russian Federation of our prisoners of war and civilians, and yes, based on this forensic expertise and also based on the in-depth interviews when people are describing why other prisoners of war died, usually it's because of the physical violence. Here we have a slide about Russification, and I will stop a little bit more on this because one of the techniques of the technique of torture is also psychological violence that are happening in these places of detention, and so prisoners of war and civilian detainees, they are forced to sing and learn by heart Russian songs and anthem, and so it is part of this Russian world ideology that Russian Federation tried to impose to these detainees. So they have this cultural component, and they try to make these people believe that we're still the same nation, that Ukraine doesn't exist, and also to promote all these narratives of one Soviet area, and all these countries are the same, so they have the same language, Russian language, they have the same cultures, the same past, and so they need to restore this great Soviet era, and so they have like books of Russian history. They give to the prisoners of war to read. They have everyday ritual when in the morning and in the evening, all the prisoners and detainees are forced to sing Russian songs or a Russian anthem. And if you don't know the words, the lyrics by heart, you can be beaten. Or, for example, all the prisoners in the one cell will be punished because one of them didn't learn by heart the poem, for example. And we have a lot of cases. And here you can also see like 60% of our detainees, like prisoners of war exchange, they testified this. Then we also have here we had also the reconstruction, the same reconstruction of the cell, and we have a Russian anthem printed out, so prisoners can learn by heart and sing it when asked. So this has also a psychological impact for the prisoners of war, and we know that it has a really serious consequences of their health on their health because of the systematic psychological and physical violence, but also social isolation. Because they don't have a right to communicate between them, even in the same cell. Usually they don't have this right, like to speak and also to have a contact with their families and to have correspondences with their families. Those who have lawyers, it's easier for them. But yes, in general, the situation is that they stay in this isolation while in captivity. And now I think I will pass to the next very important information about the fabricated criminal cases against prisoners of war and civilians that are happening now in the Russian Federation. On 2022, Russian Supreme Court recognized that Azov is a terrorist organization promoting the narrative of Ukrainian soldier as neo-Nazi. And since then, we have a wave of persecution of Ukrainian combatants, Ukrainian militaries who are in Azov or in Aidar and other militaries, prisoners of war who were persecuted and charged of the terrorism activity, or basically they had trials because they're in charge of being combatant, which is also against international law. And in our opinion, we think that it's a purely like political persecution of these people, and Russian Federation just used these trials to commit war crimes, but also a crime against humanity, against civilians, but also against prisoners of war, because all these criminal cases, they're politically motivated, and we see that there are no real charges, and they are just charged because of participating in the war as a military. Yes, I have some also statistic about the cases. You can see more like this statistic we see on the slide. It's about one court in the Russian Federation, but the recent statistic is that we have cases against Ukrainian prisoners of war. I will just say the recent statistic. So on the temporarily occupied territories, we have 373 cases and verdicts in 344 cases. And against Ukrainian civilian detainees on the territory of the Russian Federation, we have 297 cases. And again, prisoners of war in the Russian Federation, we have 500 cases verdicts. So against prisoners of war on the Russian Federation, 500 cases, and temporarily occupied territories, 373, with a verdict in over more than like 60 cases. And people are yes, they are having like 20 years of prison because of participating in war as a combatant. And we have also one case of Australian man who was, it's a case involving mercenary activities. And he had a trial in occupied Luhansk, Supreme Court of Luhansk People's Republic, so-called People's Republic, and he was sentenced to 13 years in a strict regime colony. And I will probably stop here and will, yes, wait for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just leave questions to the end, which Chris will graciously run. I'd like to have our next speaker come forth. Kateryna?
So good afternoon. If I'm not mistaken, you called Kateryna? Yes.
Yes, yes.
So it was presumed that I am the last one. That is why I'm a little bit like surprised.
I'm sorry,
But thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having us there. Thank you so much for your interest to such important issues of human rights violations and international crimes committed by Russians in Ukraine. Australia is a country, very distant geographically, but close to us in values. Today, I will speak about Ukrainian future, about Ukrainian children and Russian crimes against Ukrainian childhood. Unfortunately, because of them, thousands of Ukrainian children are affected. Maybe I will not be wrong if I presume that millions of Ukrainian children are affected by the Russian aggression, because there is no safe place in Ukraine. And even children who have been evacuated to the countries of the European Union, or for example, to the Turkey, to the United States, they are targeted by the Russian Federation. Many of them are involved in the commission of the Russian crimes. They are used by Russian FSB agents, but I will speak about this later. So Ukrainian children are killed, they are wounded by Russian soldiers. Many of them were raped. Millions of Ukrainian children still be under occupation since 2014, since the occupation of the Crimean Peninsula, and approximately 20,000. 19,546 have been abducted by Russian agents. Adolf Hitler insisted that whoever controls the children will soon control the whole world. And unfortunately, that was true in the Nazi Germany, and now it is echoed in the Putin Russia. Because we see how this youth policy and the attempt of Russians to turn children into enemies of Ukraine, into enemies of the so-called Western world, it became more aggressive every day. It is not only about UNARMIA or other military patriotic movements created especially in order to prepare children to fight, but also about ideology, about politicization of education, about cultural assimilation in the context of Ukrainian occupied territories. And it is not only my assumption as a human rights lawyer, as a person who represents interest of affected children in the United Nations treaty bodies who are cooperating with the ICC, but it is also now enshrined in many judgments and decisions, concluding observations, started with the European Court of Human Rights and finishing with the ICJ, International Court of Justice. So I was so fast to jump in, and maybe it is not very good to proceed when I didn't make some brief introduction of myself and of my organization. So I will now do better. My name is Kateryna Rashevska. I'm a legal expert at the Regional Center for Human Rights. The Regional Center for Human Rights is a Ukrainian non-governmental organization established in 2013 in Sebastopol. Now it is occupied Crimean Peninsula. The distinguished feature of my organization is that we are professional lawyers, all of us, even a communication team. And we are trying to guarantee that all people who suffered Russian aggression, who were subjected to human rights violations and international crime, receive the proper legal assistance. They do it already for 11 years. And we are cooperating very closely with the International Criminal Court, with the United Nations treaty bodies and special procedures. We are trying to guarantee that the Russian Federation will not distort the truth and the history, because now we see how even pupils in the Russian Federation are taught that something very different to what was told even before 2014 happened in history. And maybe many times you heard about Ukrainian Nazis or neo-Nazis or something like this, Ukrainian aggression against people of Donbass, or poor Russian speaker adults and children who were affected by Ukrainian aggressors. So everything was artificially created using very good instruments of the Russian propaganda. And unfortunately, till a full-scale invasion, many people, including now our partners from the European Union, they believed in this version of events. That is why, for example, in the ICC report on preliminary investigation of the situation in Ukraine in 2020, we didn't see any mention about deportation of children, which actually started in 2014 in the occupied Crimean Peninsula, when the so-called Russian foster parents came to Sebastopol, to Simferopol, in order to choose Ukrainian orphans to establish illegally foster care under them, and then just to deport these children to the territory of the Russian Federation. I still follow the fight of these children, and I can tell you that unfortunately many of them were deported at the age of 1-2 years, and that is why they were raised as Russians. The Ukrainian identity was not formed, and that is why now these children, the fight of these children and the solution of this issue is very hard and tough. That is why we should raise the question of accountability, because this crime is not only the crime of the war crime, but also crime against humanity and against childhood. So in practice, the Russian Federation is using Ukrainian children, instrumentalizing them, sometimes even weaponizing them to serve multiple goals. Russians are trying to fix their own demographic problems. Putin himself mentioned many times that in the Russian Federation there is a huge demographic problem. Women should give birth to more children, that they should raise a new generation of strong people who will be ready to protect their motherland, but actually to gain Russian imperialistic interests. Also, I'm sure that they are trying to rebuild a standing army completely destroyed by Ukraine at the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022. And in doing so, unfortunately, they become a huge threat to the regional peace and security. we see how not only Ukraine, but also our neighboring states like Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, they are now strengthening their capacities to protect themselves. They're introducing new trainings for pupils, for students, in order to guarantee that they will be ready enough when Russians will decide that someone should be protected in their countries, should be sold, should be rescued. Actually, when Russians will decide to launch a new stage of their aggression against someone else. Also, they are using children in their propaganda, trying to legitimize the crime of aggression. I have already mentioned this, but remember what narratives the Russian Federation used in order, first of all, to start the annexation, the occupation of the Crimean Peninsula, and then to launch the aggression against some parts of Ukrainian Donbass. So it was the protection of people, because in Ukraine some junta gained power and they started persecuting people who speak Russians and something like this. But actually, when we see the number of crimes registered by Ukrainian OPG office committed because on the basis of some national hatred, so we will not see a huge number of people who were killed, who were raped, or who were subjected to some other types of crimes just because they speak Russian. So it was completely artificially created just in order to hide and to portray themselves, to hide their crime and to portray themselves like rescuers. Also, the Russian Federation is trying to manipulate not only when they are abducting children, for example, describing that this is a process of evacuation, or they are just trying to save Ukrainian children, but they are trying to manipulate these other processes, like the process of return of Ukrainian deported children. We see that it is so-called long-term time bomb, because even when some children are repatriated, they still face some trauma, and this trauma is long-standing. We need specific programs in order to guarantee the psychosocial adaptations, reintegration, and unfortunately, it is not easy, especially when you face a full-scale invasion of your neighboring state. As for today, the Russian Federation has liberated, because I will not tell that it was repatriation of children. In each case, it was a specific operation in order to gain at least some children rescued from Russia or from occupied territories. So as for today, the number of such children is 1,777. Every week the number is rising, but unfortunately amongst these 19,546, around 90% of children remain under Russian control. It means that every day these children face huge propaganda, they are militarized, their identity is erased, they are Russified. I was trying to make some mathematics in order to understand how many children, how many people Ukraine will lose in several generations. So in 2 generations, depending on fertility rates, Ukraine could lose between 150,000 to over 700,000 people. And Russia, it gains that same number. So if we are talking about some intent, some reasoning, and the goal of the Russian Federation when it abducts Ukrainian children, this goal is very genocidal. So we should recognize it. And I think that the European Court of Human Rights captured Russia's goal the best in its latest decision dated on July 2025, when judges recognized that when the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine, committed so many violations of human rights, it pursued the goal to destroy Ukraine as a sovereign state and to subjugate everything that remains from Ukrainian nation to its influence and to its control. So now I would like to tell you more about some other distortion of reality by the Russian side. I have already mentioned briefly this question of repatriation of children, but more and more we see how Russians are trying to use this very very close to heart's issue in order to manipulate the international community and in order to demonstrate that Ukraine is a failed state which is not capable even to return children, to identify children, even to provide some lists of children. And because of this, according to Russians, Ukraine doesn't deserve to exist. But actually, it is Russia who failed to fulfill its obligations under international law, including under international humanitarian law. I was very surprised when I saw the new commentary to the Forest Geneva Convention elaborated by the experts of the ICRC, because many articles, they are interpreted according to new practice created by Russians. And unfortunately, it is not the best practice and lessons learned. It is about complete violations of rules related to evacuation, related to repatriation of children, related to their identification and guarantees in the sphere of family reunification. So what Russians done? They did nothing in order to fulfill these obligations because they didn't provide the ICRC with the list of children. I am not talking about even Ukraine or some other neutral state. Actually, I'm not sure that Russians have this register of all children they have abducted from Ukraine under the guise of evacuation or rehabilitation or some medical assistance. And why I'm not sure? Because each and every region subject of the Russian Federation was responsible to welcome some amount of kids. Maybe they have internal registers of each subject with some numbers and names and surnames. But we should understand that very often, especially in the case of young children, Russians are trying to hide their identity. They are changing their personal data, not only their names, but also place of birth, date of birth. It means that to find these children, especially when they were transferred to Russian foster family, is just impossible. What is an interesting fact that Russians are trying to demonstrate that they did everything in order to return children properly according to the rules of the international law. But when we see dates of different regulations and decrees of Putin, we can understand that the decree related to the facilitation of the process of family reunification, so actually decree related on related to repatriation of abducted children, were issued only on May 16, 2023. So it was after the arrest warrant of the ICC against him, which appeared on March 17, 2023. So without proper reaction of the international community, including judicial institutions, no one will be returned to Ukraine, will be reunified with families. And of course, the sufferings of parents and of legal guardians of children, they continue because we see that even in case when the repatriation of children was agreed with Qatar, or for example, with some other intermediary state or with the ICRC, people, so parents and children, still be interrogated during several hours by the Russian FSB agents. They should wait on this borderline even for a prolonged period of time. And of course, it is additional trauma to people who were subjected to different violations during occupation or in the territory of the Russian Federation. The situation under occupation is also terrifying because I can make some parallels with the policies of totalitarian states that preceded the Second World War. Actually, I am talking about Nazi Germany. I represent before the United Nations Human Rights Committee several children, and among them there is a 6-year-old girl. She is from Crimea, but she only recently returned from this occupied territory and learned that Crimea was occupied by Russia, that she is not Russian girl, that she is Ukrainian girl. And why she was not aware about this earlier? Because her mother was really afraid to tell the truth because of a very young age of this girl, and the fact that teachers in kindergarten asked many times children what parents tell them, what parents are discussing at homes. And it was very risky to speak the truth, to describe the truth to young children, especially in this case, because the father of this girl was charged with high treason just because of his pro-Ukrainian views. So what about other types of crimes? In my practice, unfortunately, I saw children who were tortured like adults because they were suspected of terrorism activities. I also saw children who were raped or who were forced to witness rape of their close relatives, especially mothers. I also have a child who witnessed the murder of his mother by Russian soldiers, and many other types of violations, including indoctrination and militarization in schools and re-education camps. As for education camps, this is a specific network of institutions, including ex-pioneers camps, but also specific training grounds, like for soldiers, for people who are prepared to fight in Russian army. Actually, we see some policy, some links between this militarization of children and then conscription of young adults, or even mobilization of these young adults in newly occupied territories. And unfortunately now, among people who not only served into the Russian army, but were killed in combat, there are people who, at the moment of the beginning of the occupation, were children in occupied Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. So Russians are quite good in turning people in their soldiers and in using Ukrainians to kill other Ukrainians. Maybe this is one of their goals. So just in order to sum up and to tell what we can do with all these terrifying crimes and violations, I don't see any other options how we can help children and how we can return all of them, except of the occupation of Ukrainian territories. Because occupation doesn't mean peace. Occupation doesn't mean something good. Occupation about creation of territories of unfreedom, when people should be loyal or just to demonstrate their loyalty to the aggressor state in order to survive. People are subjected to forcible passportization. With Russian passports, they receive duties to the Russian Federation, and that is why they should obey. Also, I would like to tell that we should continue to push the Russian Federation to fulfill its obligations, including obligations under judicial and quasi-judicial decisions, because if no they think that everything is good, and they will not face any accountability in future, like it was many times with the USSR, with the Russian Empire. Russians were never punished for the crimes committed against Ukrainians. This is the fact, and this is one of the reasons why we have now this greatest war in the history of Europe after the Second World War. Also, I would like to tell you that we should fight and we should be ready to challenge all these Russian attempts to distort reality in media. That is why publications in different journals and newspapers are really good for us and for our children, but not exclusively. I participated many times in different like scientific conference because I am PhD in international law, and I saw by my own eyes that the Russian influence in academic scholar society is so strong. And that is why please continue to write about the crimes of Russians against Ukrainians during this war, because this war is, among other things, also the war for the right to tell the truth. The very truth about crimes against Ukrainian childhood, against Ukrainian adults, against Ukrainian nation. Thank you.
Carl, you're muted. I might jump in here if Carl is not connecting. So thank you very much, Kateryna, for that very detailed and powerful testimony of the work that you're doing in relation, particularly in relation to children. We have one final speaker before I have a question, if we have the time. So without further ado, I hand over to Tatiana.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us when it is already almost evening there in Australia. So I will try to share my presentation, and I need your help in telling me if you see it. Okay, so I click here, and okay, can you see it?
We can see it very well. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Wait 1 second. Okay, so my name is Tatiana Zhukova. I'm International Advocacy Manager of the Human Rights Center ZMINA. Later, I will tell more about my organization, but first I would like to start giving more general information about Ukraine. So my colleagues, they have already mentioned a bit about this, so I will be really short. That there is such trend to tell in the international society that the invasion began on the 24th of February of 2022. However, we always should highlight that it actually began in 2014 from Crimea. Then it spread also to the eastern part of Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk, which are under occupation already for 11 years. And then when Russia saw its complete, that the perpetrators are not held accountable, then they, in Ukraine, in Crimea, in Donetsk, Luhansk, also in Moldova, in Transnistria, which is also occupied by pro-Russian separatists, in Georgia, in South Ossetia and Abkhazia, which is also occupied by Russia, for all the crimes which they committed in Syria, in African countries, they have never been held accountable. So in 2022, they decided to go for more, and they launched the full-scale invasion against Ukraine on the 24th of February of 2022. So currently, here you can see on the map the territories of Ukraine, which are now under occupation. So in red, these are occupied territories. It is around 20% of Ukrainian lands. Green, it is the territories which were under occupation. And
sorry,
then Ukraine...
sorry to interrupt. If you could click on show the slideshow, because it's not moving along, so we can't
yes,
see
it's not moving. Okay, one second.
Can't see that. Very well, thank you.
1 second. So, okay, this. Okay, I guess this is. Can you see?
That's perfect. Now it's the correct slide. Thank you.
And now can you see it moving?
we can see it moving and we have it in a full screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for notifying. So yes, so here you can see the map of occupied lands. So the around 20% of Ukrainian land is occupied, and there are around 6 million people living under occupation. In particular, about 1.6 million children. That's about whom already Kateryna told about their situation in occupation. And so now I would like to concentrate more about one of the international crimes committed in the occupied territories and against Ukraine by the Russian forces. So, well, currently we have already more than 197,000 of international crimes committed by Russians in Ukraine. Yes, these are crimes which my colleagues already mentioned: cyber attacks, deportation of children to Russia and forcible transfer to Belarus, indoctrination and militarization. There is also the tortures, enforced disappearances, persecution, appropriation, destruction of cultural heritage, also bombardment of civilian infrastructure such as hospitals, schools, such as the maternity houses, the one which was attacked that you can see on the photo. It is also about bombarding of kindergartens. Just a few days ago, I'm not sure if it was in Australian media, but there was also the attack on the kindergarten in Kharkiv region. So it was when children were there inside. So basically, these and many more crimes are committed in Ukraine, and I would like to particularly focus on the one which my organization works on. So it is crime against humanity of persecution. So here I will tell you a little bit more about my organization, about our work about this crime. Also, I will tell you more about the crime of persecution, the people who are targeted by this crime, the components of this crime, and also I will provide you with some recommendations. So about my organization, it is Human Rights Center Zmina. Zmina means change in Ukrainian. So we work on the documentation of international crimes. We started doing it in 2014. So then we were documenting human rights violations and war crimes in the occupied Crimea. Yes, we were speaking, we even went to occupied Crimea to document the life there under occupation. In 2016 it was. And so like this, we try to document from like these field missions and also from open source data according to international protocols, Istanbul Protocol and Berkeley Protocol. We document the cases of violations. And then we submit them to the international and national mechanisms for persecution. We submit these cases to the International Criminal Court, to the UN Commission of Inquiry, to the UN Monitoring Mission, to the European Union for the sanctions lists. That, for example, just recently, 2 people from our sanctions lists were actually included by the European Union to sanctions. And then, as I told, we do it by open source research, yes, and also by field missions. So here on the photos, you can see the process of documentation. So we have part of the team who go to the liberated areas, and then they speak with people who live there under occupation, and they document what happened to these people. And in particular, our field of work is about torture, enforced disappearances, about persecution, about the extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detentions. So now I will tell you more about the persecution. So persecution, the policy of Russian persecution, we really see it from the documented cases that it is really widespread and methodological policy, which started in Crimea, was also implemented in Donetsk and Luhansk, and now is also implemented in all the occupied territories of Ukraine. So what Russia does, it researches the population who could resist, who could have the pro-Ukrainian moods and show these moods, who identify as openly as Ukrainians or indigenous people, Crimean Tatars, who are active, or the ones who have some influence and the power of decision-making, yes, in the occupied territories. So here is the data from actually our report from back 2023. And then it is data only collected by my organization. So you can imagine that until now, until 2025, and if together all the information from all the NGOs, from the state authorities, so the number will be much higher. So this number is the number of persecuted people and their groups. Yes, so these are activists and volunteers, these are journalists, these are local authorities, the educators, cultural workers, religious figures, lawyers, and their relatives. Yeah, so these people are persecuted in order to suppress resistance, in order to Russify the occupied territories. So, right, if it changes. Okay. So, well, I will tell you a little bit more about about some of these groups. Yeah, so since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, in each village and city, there started protests, pro-Ukrainian protests against the Russian occupation. They were completely peaceful. And one of participants of these protests was Mariano Garcia Calatayud. He is even not Ukrainian, he is Spanish citizen. He moved to Ukraine back in 2014, and he was working on providing humanitarian assistance to the population in Ukraine. So he went to such pro-Ukrainian rally in Kherson region of Ukraine. It is on the south, which Kherson was occupied by Russians. So Mariano went there to show support to Ukraine. And then after one of such rallies, he was just abducted. Firstly, there were no information about his whereabouts. And then we discovered that he is actually held in Crimea, in the occupied Crimea. So he was sent from Kherson to Crimea, what is done to many abducted persons, civilians. So, and then in Crimea, he was tortured, he was beaten, that he lost his teeth, he doesn't have his front teeth. Then he also, the dogs were biting him. So he was tortured and then he just disappeared. Yeah, so now we don't know about his whereabouts. It was told that he was transferred from Crimea, but then any other prisons didn't accept that he is held there. Yes, so he just disappeared. We don't know, or he was transferred somewhere, or he was just killed, as it happened to many Ukrainians and many civilian detainees in the Russian detention. So, and just to tell that he was 77 years old. Then also journalists, they are widely persecuted because Russia understands their value. These are people who firstly inform the local population that still resistance exists there in occupation, and also they show to the outside world about the reality in occupation. So now we know about at least 26 journalists from occupied territories who are detained by Russia. Here you can see some of their photos. In particular, for example, Victoria Roshchina, she was actually murdered in detention. So she tried to go to the occupied territories to document their reality, what is going on. And then she was just detained. She was held in detention, and she was actually even prepared to be returned, to be exchanged. Yes, and then just the notification about her death arrived. And when her body was returned to Ukraine, it was with the signs of torture. Yes, her body was returned without part of organs, without eyes. Yes, so like these Russians, they try to hide tortures which she went through. Also, there are, as I told already, local authorities who are also detained and persecuted by the Russian Federation. So why Russia does it? Because when the occupiers, they come to the territory, yes, they try to establish the control by also dragging into cooperation the local authorities, which have already the power and influence on the local population. And then for those who don't want to cooperate, they just detain them, they torture them, they kill them. Here you can see 4 of mayors and heads of villages who were actually executed by Russians. For example, Olga Sukhenko, so she was the head of the village in Bucha district in Kyiv region, which was occupied. And then Russians was trying to force her to cooperate, but then she and her family, they showed pro-Ukrainian stance. They didn't want to cooperate. So Russians just came to their house, They detained her, her son, and her husband. And then already after liberation of the territory, Ukrainians found their bodies in the mass grave. And Olha, she was her arms were tied. Yes, so it shows the first signs of forcible death. Here is the quote about actually how they try to force for cooperation, but I will not read it because we don't have much time for this. And also, so mostly how it is done, this persecution. So Russians, they come and they detain person like officially under some trumped up charges, yes, and they try to sentence the person, or also they just abduct person and put person in the torture chambers, yes. My organization works in particular about documentation of these torture chambers. We found out that they are established both in the, for example, police stations and pretrial detention centers, but also in completely unofficial places for detention of civilians, such as garages, such as the residential buildings, such as administrative buildings, and even schools. Yes, so we found in the Kherson region one of the school basements, which was actually used as the torture chamber for the detained civilians. So we found 20 persons who were held there in the school basement and who were tortured. So we documented their cases and we included this in the report, which you can also find on our website. And also we documented another case about the women's cells in the torture chambers. Yeah, so the special part when women detainees were held and also tortured, like the in this massive in the framework of this massive policy of the Russian Federation. So how these people are tortured. So basically it is with electric shocks. It is the majority of cases which we documented with beatings, with dog bites, also with the suffocation. There is also sexual violence documented. They are deprived of the basic needs, also in particular of medical assistance, because of what also already at least 3 political prisoners and civilian detainees have died in detention. Also, there is the psychological pressure, such as also Lyubov already told, that detainees, they are forced to speak in Russian, to sing Russian songs, and they are tried to be forced to show their support, yes, to Russian. So also here is the quote which of the Anatoly Harhati. So he is the 70-year-old man who from the Kharkiv region. So when his village was occupied, yes, he documented the Russians who were entering his village, and he just published it in YouTube, this video. Because of this, he was detained for 100 years, for 100 days, and then he was tortured there in detention. And so basically, like this, we see that Russians, they're even afraid, they feel the threat from the 70-year-old men. And also, they don't just torture and deprive of liberty Ukrainians, but they also make these sham trials against people. Yeah, so this is both against civilian detainees and also against prisoners of war. So together with the Media Initiative for Human Rights, Lyubov, who was already speaking, we have conducted the such research about trials against Ukrainians in the Russian Federation. So we analyzed 600 cases of the trials, and in all of the cases, we documented the violations of right for fair trial, in particular the violation of judicial independence, of public hearing, of presumption of innocence, and also of defense. We also found out that from 90 to 100% of the cases, there was bias and discrimination of Ukrainians during this the judicial prosecution. And also what is characteristic that Russia implements its law in the occupied territories of Ukraine. yes, which is completely contradictory to the international law. So occupying power comes to the occupied territories, implements its law, and for example, Russia then sentences Ukrainians under the accusations of sabotage, of terrorism, of extremism, of the criticizing this special military operation, as they call war, and also for high treason. Yes, so they basically sentence Ukrainians for supporting Ukraine in the occupied territories of Ukraine, yes, under their Russian law, which is by itself contradictory. And also Russian media, propaganda media, they also are part of all of these mechanisms. So, for example, the court hearings on the cases of sabotage and of high treason, they are closed for the public, and even relatives of the detainees, they cannot go to the court hearings. Yes, and the relatives, journalists, activists, they cannot visit the court hearings, but Russian propaganda media, they may come there, and then they make their propagandist reportages, news about the Ukrainian terrorists. Yes, so we can see that these trials are also used in the propagandist goals. Also, so here you can see some places of detention. So Russia, when it sentences Ukrainians, after it sends it to the faraway territories, and you can see that it is just there near Mongolia, near Japan. Yes, so why is it done? To isolate them from their lawyers, from their families, to completely break their resistance. And here I will just, to almost finishing, I will tell you the story of Irina Danilovich. So she's one of the civilian detainees, political prisoners. She's from Crimea. She worked as a nurse, and also after the beginning of the occupation, she felt that it is her duty to speak about what is going on in occupation. So she started also writing about the medical sphere in the occupied Crimea, and also about the trials on the politically motivated cases. And because of this, she started receiving threats for trying to speak the truth. She started receiving threats, and then she was just abducted. She was pushed from the bus stop. She was pushed in the car, yes, and then she disappeared for 13 days. And later we discovered that during these 13 days, she was held in the basement. She was brought to the forest and threatened to be killed, and she was forced to sign the blank papers. And later she was accused of having the explosives in her bag. Yes, it is also the tactic which Russians do. They put the explosives, or they put the prohibited literature to the houses, to the items of the detainees, and then they accuse them of something. So she was accused, and then she was sentenced to 6 years and 11 months of detention. And in detention, she was held in sub-zero temperatures. And because of this, she lost her hearing behind bars, and she doesn't get the medical assistance which she needs. So yes, and like this, we have hundreds, thousands actually of people who are detained, but also we have cases of people who were liberated. So here you can see some of their photos. Here's Lenia Umerova, the social media manager, who was detained. Also Mariana Chechelyuk, also Heluk. So he's a journalist who was also held in detention, and Maxim Butkevich. So he's actually co-founder of my organization. He was a prisoner of war. Yeah, so in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, he decided to go to protect his homeland. And then he was captured by Russians, and he was accused of targeting civil population on the day when he was even not on the battlefield. Then he was visiting conference in Kyiv. Yes, so completely under the false accusations. And then Ukraine, together with international society, managed to push Russia to exchange these people. So here I will just pass to the recommendations about what can we do for these people in detention and for Ukraine. Yeah, so we can become their voice. When Russia tries to silence them, we have to speak even louder. We can mention them in some statements, in some publications in social media. We can speak about them with the local journalists, with our families, with our friends, just to spread the knowledge about suffering of these people. Also, there is possibility to write letters to their to the places of their detention. We have the campaign, it is called Letter to Free Crimea. So in the framework of this campaign, you can also join and you can write them letters. Also, you can become their mentors. So just to write sometimes about them, to mention their names, to hold them on the agenda. And also there is the recommendation for Australia to engage actively in the work of the international platform for the release of people deprived of liberty because of the Russian aggression. Also, there is the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. Also, Australia is part of it. So there is need to engage also actively to find the ways of returning civilians deprived of liberty and also deported children. Also, the Register of Damage. Also, Australia is part of the register, and the register has one problem that it is established for the cases only from 2022. But there is importance also to spread the its mandate to 2014. So also Australia could become such country pushing for this widening of the mandate of the Register of Damage. And also the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression of Russia against Ukraine was just established recently, and also now it is open for joining. And also it is about sanctions. So we recommend to impose sanctions against the perpetrators and against the Russian economy sectors. Yes, to firstly stop its fueling its war machine, and also to show the individual perpetrators that they are that the international society sees them and that they will be actually held accountable for their actions. And just please keep speaking about Ukraine, because we don't just stand actually for our liberty, but we stand for the common values. Yes, we stand for the human rights, for democracy, for international law, which is tried to be destroyed and violated by the aggressor. And like this, just staying united and supporting each other, we will show not only to Russia, but to all the authoritarian states that they will be held accountable for such acts of violence and aggression. So thank you. I finished, and sorry for being quite long in my speech.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, for your remarks and your presentation. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to all the speakers for the inspiring and very courageous work that you're doing. So it's really impressive, and we are running a little bit short on time, but I do have a question, I think, for all of you, really, and if colleagues or other participants online would like to jump in by way of Q&A or by way of chat questions, that now's the time to do so as well. But my question is really trying to, I guess, pull a few things together across the four presentations that we've heard from Sasha, from Lyubov, from Kateryna, and from you, Tatiana. And so just, looking back at my notes, what I found, I guess, striking is that I think among the many comments that Sasha made in relation to, I think, the very useful breakdown of the hybrid war paradigm, I think the explanation of the paradigm of hybrid war is that specifically with respect to the cybersphere, there was a lack of international law, applicable, workable international law to actually seek accountability, to seek prosecution of the sort of conduct that is occurring. On the other hand, Lyubov, in her very detailed and quite gruesome description of the detention conditions, clearly, obviously outlined that these detention conditions are a severe violation of international law, international humanitarian law, international human rights law, and the like. Kateryna, same in relation to children. But what I found interesting in Kateryna's presentation was that Kateryna, you seem to be engaging with the ECHR, with the ICJ. You mentioned the UN treaty bodies, special rapporteurs, sort of special procedures, the ICC. So you're making use of international law, I guess, in your advocacy issues, in trying to establish accountability for the violations of international law that are being perpetrated. And very much also, Tatiana, I think in your presentation, obviously the documentation of all these crimes and severe violations of international law is often the first step to establishing accountability, because without this sort of documentation, you know, the basis for any further construction of accountability is a little bit missing. So my question is really in terms of looking across your 4 presentations. I am an international lawyer, so and when we talk about international law, so at university in classes, there's always the criticism that international law doesn't work, that it's not useful on the ground. And what strikes me is a more nuanced picture across your presentations, in the sense that on the one hand, you're saying, okay, there are severe violations of international law, and there is a lack of accountability. But on the other hand, you're still working in that framework. So if I could maybe ask each of our speakers just very briefly to give us your individual perspective on what the value of international law is in your activities, in the sort of work that you're doing. I mean, I know this is a very big question, but do you see value in international law? Is it helpful to you? Is it not helpful? Are you using international law just because there's nothing else? So is it a measure of last resort? So maybe just a quick comment to get us started, and then we see whether we have any other questions. But thank you very much again for your time this evening or this morning. Yeah, it's really inspiring and impressive that you're continuing with the work that you're doing. So I see Sasha with a hand up first, so I hand over to you, Sasha.
If I started about look, okay, I'm really sure that it's maybe it will be better without video.
Much better. Okay. Yes, much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So international law, it's a big answer for propagandist fake I don't know, storm, which exactly Russia bring to hold the international community, like not only cyberspace but information space. And that's why what we can answer, we can like drop so many money and resource to trying to answer the same scale of fake news or something. This only one way from our side which can be answer for that's decisions of courts which exactly based on fact. That's why Ukrainian civil society is so in of documenting war crimes against humanity, episode of genocide, and providing crime of aggression more and more data. Now Ukrainian conflict, it's a biggest documented scope of international crimes, which exactly we have during the whole history of human being. So yes, decision of international mechanism which exists, it's answer for whole propagandas and big question in the history, who started this war, who ongoing this war, and who exactly can stop this war. Putin can tomorrow stop this war and even provide through his propagandist and cyber system information for whole his population that we are in war. It can be tomorrow. So, but for us, really important that exactly international law give us opportunity to base in facts and give judgment that such behavior, one of the biggest country in the world, it's not normal. Because what they wanna truly change the norma, what we will accept like a basic line, and they trying to destroy democracy like a basic line. They trying to bring back, law of biggest, law of more force, and that's why, as for me, international law, it's really critical answer to this big threat from one side. From other side, yes, cyberspace, cyber crime, and even if we will look at the Geneva Convention, we don't have a lot of description around the cyber services which can be provided for person in captivity or illegally detention. And that's just to put up at the situation when we need to describe all what happened inside of this area and accept it like a new battlefield or new service field, which, for example, now we have a condition for prisoners of war to write letter by hand, which impossible now if we will speak about jail in Russia Federation, even if exactly Russia Federation recognize that they hold such person, which Tanya speak a lot about fully destroying their rights in this situation. But if we will speak about calling through WhatsApp, sending electronic mail or something like this, so all of this not in the rules, not at the looking field. So from one side, international law critical for us. From other side, it needs to be developed for modern level of technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Anyone else who would like to? Okay, Kateryna, thank you.
So I will try to be as laconic as possible. The first point is that the international law works so efficiently as states, as international organizations allow it to be. So it means that we should find some ways in order to implement rules which were agreed by the states, by the other subjects of the international law. The second point is that in order to tell that nothing works, we should exhaust all possible mechanisms and instruments. And that is why I was trying to describe the work of our organizations, that we are trying to use each and every opportunity in order to tell that, we exhausted each and every legal remedy in order to restore violated rights of victims and survivors, but unfortunately it didn't work. And it can help us to understand what are the challenges, what are the problems with the international legal order, and what we can do in order to try to to ameliorate the situation. And the third point is related to the fact, and I can see it, you also mentioned it during posing the question, that yes, international law is not useful on the battlefield. And unfortunately, international law didn't help us to avoid the abduction of thousands of Ukrainian children or torture of thousands of Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilian detainees. So it means that the system of prevention doesn't work. The Genocide Convention has never prevented the commission of the genocide. If I am mistaken, please provide me with an example when the Genocide Convention helped us to prevent the commission of the crime of genocide in some states, and I will accept it. I will not tell something like this in future, but I don't know any example. But we still have this hope that at least the system of accountability will work. For Ukraine, for other states, where the same violations of human rights, but also of other rules and regulations of the international law were committed. So I would like also to tell, and Sasha mentioned it during her answer, that the Geneva Conventions don't work in cyberspace. Of course, because the Geneva Conventions were elaborated at the moment when even the definition of cyberspace was not agreed. And maybe it is the starting point that some international treaties and laws that are too old-fashioned in our modern world. Yes, of course, we have some values which are for the whole epochs and times, but we should understand that others, they should be modernized they should be rethought, because if we are not rethinking international law, Russia does. And the main goal for Russia is not to regulate international relations by international law, but to destroy this international law and to impose the law of force, to resolve all disputes using arms and people as cannon fodder. And I also saw in chat some question to me related to to the close of work of the US side in the United States and how it impacted our work on identification and on repatriation of abducted children. So of course it affected the situation, and not by a good manner. We should understand that many organizations, non-governmental organizations, but not exclusively, received funding from the US side, and it helped us to do what we have done already, to have all these 1,777 children returned to their families. But we should also understand that we are trying to have other partners, to have other donors, to continue our work, to be as independent as possible in order to guarantee that every child abducted by Russians will be reunited with his or her family members. What it impacted also, it is the work of the international organizations. Because of the lack of money from the United States, let's be frank, the human rights bodies of the United Nations should move from Geneva, because it is too expensive, to Vienna. And what I see as a practitioner, as a lawyer, that we are submitted individual complaints on behalf of children to the United Nations treaty bodies, but these complaints are not registered yet. And we have the answer from the committees that, yes, it was very well received, but we are registering complaints dated on 2023 because of liquidity crisis, because of the cut of our staff, and because of other internal problems. How bodies which are responsible for the protection, for the prevention of the commission of all these human rights violations may depend on funding from the one state? Really? So it is one of the main problems. It is even not related exclusively to the situation in Ukraine. So we should think about it. We should pose these questions. We should avoid politicization of the sphere of international law as much as it's possible, because it is just impossible to make it neutral. But without it, unfortunately, more and more people will suffer every day, and will be so disappointed, and will repeat that international law is death, and everything, unfortunately, doesn't work.
Okay, thank you, Kateryna, for that very comprehensive answer, and thank you for also picking up on the question in the chat. I was going to ask you the question actually straight after, but you've already answered it straight away. So thank you. I see Tatiana with her hand raised. Over to you, Tatiana.
Yes, thank you. So yes, I completely support my colleague about the dependence of the international law to the political will of the states. Yes, and well, we have seen it in Ukraine also. We felt it since 2014, when there were actually almost no movements for holding Russia to accountability. And then because of this, well, we have to work and we have to use this flexibility of international law to push for its change, for the transformation, so that it protects states in all the situations of violations of aggression against them. And well, but now Ukraine uses quite the momentum about the there is still attention about our case. Yes, so we try to exhaust all the international mechanisms, and in particular, for example, there are arrest warrants, 6 already arrest warrants against Russians for the international crimes in Ukraine. In particular, for example, against the, I guess there was some problems with connection, but can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah. We can hear you. I think Chris has dropped.
Okay, yes. So I will just continue. So that there are arrest warrants already against Russians, in particular against the presidents of the Russian Federation, against Putin. And we see that, well, maybe it will take long to arrest him. Yes, we know that international justice, it is quite a long process. Yes, but then still we already see that it already influences them, that Putin cannot already travel to many countries where he may be detained. For example, that he didn't go to Brazil, he didn't go to South Africa because of the fear to be detained. Yes, but then we also see that some countries, they actually just violate this international criminal law. And then they, for example, Mongolia, yes, who just allowed him to enter to their territories. And because of this, also we have to create more like the respect, I guess, to the international law, and so to comply with it. Yes, and because of this, also we, Australia and Ukraine, all together, we have to push for this respect to international law. And for example, now ICC, International Criminal Court, faces huge danger because of the sanctions from the US. Yes, so, well, we have to advocate to have such the independent international structure of international criminal law. Yes, and well, but we understand that this international justice may take long. Because of this, it is also important to work in other spheres, for example, about memorization of the suffering of victims of the aggression. So because of this, also we document not only about accountability, but also with documentation and then creation of reports of exhibitions about people who suffered because of the aggression, just so the world just remembers their suffering. And also I saw the question, there was the long question about the media. Yes, that many messages about Ukraine, it just doesn't make to the Australian media. And then there was question how to actually make them hear about the situation. So, well, I guess for us, how we do it, so we just try to use it like now. Yes, we just try to advocate with people from different countries online, or we go to advocacy visits, and like this, we try to raise awareness just a little bit. Yes, because we understand now in the whole world there is the whole spectrum of violations going on, of wars, of aggressions, of genocides. Yes, and because of this, it is hard to hold exactly topic of Ukraine on the agenda. But because of this, we try to speak like this with you, and I hope that maybe you will remember something from what we were speaking today, and you will just forward it. Yes, and like this, the information will be spreading. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. My camera has stopped working, so unfortunately you can't see me anymore, but I'm still here and I'm still watching. And just to say that, yes, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar on the law school website as well after the event, so that we have, that the people who couldn't make it tonight can listen and watch the discussion as well. You have also answered, Tatiana, a question that I think you can't see, but which was posed in the Q&A section, which very much was along the lines: how do you maintain attention to Ukraine and the crisis there when the news media is taken over by events in Gaza, in Sudan, and all the rest of it? But I think you've answered that question as well. So I would like to hear also from Lyubov, who I can see has raised her hand, maybe for some final reflections from her perspective. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with my colleagues. I think that the issue is a political will to be aligned with international law, but and we can see it also with the ICC, which is under the threat of severe sanctions, and they are questioning about their operational work in the future. And I think that also all these violations and cases in Ukraine will be a precedent for the development of the ICC jurisprudence, and also jurisprudence of the national courts, which have cases under universal jurisdiction now, and I want just to give also one example from our work. So at the beginning, it was very difficult for us to understand if civilians will lose their protection because they're filming some Russian troops and sending these videos and photos to some chats with their friends. And while in these chats, they can have those who, like militaries, who are taking part and a member of armed forces of Ukraine. And it was a question for us: how should we interpret these actions? Should these civilians lose their protection under international humanitarian law or no? So I think all these cases will also be a precedent of developing international humanitarian law as well. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, Mike, I'm still having computer problems, but I'm still here. Thank you very much, Lyubov, for your perspective. So I think that brings us to the end of our webinar. So I would like to thank you again, all the speakers, for taking the time. Appreciate the fact that it's 2 hours of, at least 2 hours of your working day as well, under difficult conditions. So thank you again for all the powerful testimony and work that you do. Yeah, with that, I think we'll close off the webinar. Thank you again, and hope to stay in touch and continue the conversation. So thank you, and good morning and good evening to everyone else.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Bye.